Happy Saturday once again, everyone. It's good to see you. It's good to be back. Kind of a big one this week for the Wingy because it was kind of eventful in WWE and AEW this week, and we have some relatively interesting wrestling news. So it ain't going to be the most boring podcast in the world today, that's for sure. Hope you guys are having a great one. Looking forward to diving in to everything we have to talk about today. Of course, AEW held its Blood and Guts event this past Wednesday on Dynamite, which means within the span of 3 weeks, we're going to get 4 double cage, double ring matches between the two companies. Vastly different types of matches, but we're still getting 4 of them because we have Survivor Series coming up. Last night on SmackDown, we did get a little bit more groundwork laid for Survivor Series, which is coming up 2 weeks from today. I'm going to be there, by the way, along with a couple of you in the chat. There's Zach right there that I see. So if anybody's going to be in the San Diego area, downtown, near Petco, 2 weeks from today, hit me up. We're going to probably, Zach, we actually need to find a place to kind of hang out a couple of hours before the show in case anybody wants to stop by and say hello. We're probably going to be doing that. So hit me up if you are going to be in San Diego in 2 weeks for Survivor Series. But last night on SmackDown, we had some groundwork laid for the women, as on Monday night, we kind of got an overall idea of what their War Games match is going to be like. But Charlotte backed out last night, so they're trying to create some tension there. We'll see what kind of story that develops into. Also, Drew McIntyre returned last night and joined the Men's Survivor Series team. This is something that I mentioned on Monday night that I thought would happen, and it did. And we did get confirmation that both War Games matches will indeed be 5-on-5, not 4-on-4, which means the men's teams both have one person more to add. Pretty sure it's going to be Roman on the babyface side, but what about the heel side? Are we talking about Brock here? We'll get into that. Other than that, last night on SmackDown, we'll talk about the return of Zack Ryder, or Matt Cardona, but he did show up last night as Zack Ryder. We had a feeling we might see him in that John Cena tournament, and we did. We also have a big night coming up this Monday night on Raw. Now, of course, last Monday we were here to watch the big Raw show in Boston. John Cena winning the Intercontinental Championship. This Monday on Raw, they are in New York City, Madison Square Garden, so John Cena will probably have a title match. He'll put that IC title on the line against somebody, and that's what I'm hoping they do on Monday. I can't see John Cena going into the Garden and not having a match, especially since he's Intercontinental Champion now. So we'll talk about that, and we'll see if my idea of Dominic winning it back at Survivor Series is still likely to come true or not. Also, we have a mystery opponent on Monday night as well. We're going to talk about Santana inexplicably dropping the TNA title a couple nights ago on Impact to Kazarian, and what kind of little work that TNA is attempting to get out of that. We've got some big Joe Hendry news, some big Chris Jericho news, some news on Sting's son, who is beginning to wrestle. Also, some clarification on Mark Shapiro's comments about the WWE changing their pay-per-view names. We'll get into that. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the Nixon Newell and Miranda Ali's AEW situation. That is such a multi-layered story that I didn't think it was worth my time to read 9.5 fucking paragraphs of what went on there. But I do understand the basics of it, so we'll kind of get into that as well. We're also going to talk about the very sad story of WWE kicking out West Side Gun from their show because they're butthurt about his sampling and whatnot. Also, Blood and Guts this past Wednesday, the men and the women's match, I believe both delivered. They certainly delivered on the violence, but I think the women really stood out. I thought the women's match was better, and I enjoyed it slightly more, although if you're a sicko and you're somebody that likes, multiple pints of blood in your wrestling, then Wednesday night was for you. We'll talk about the Full Gear card, we'll talk about the Survivor Series card, and we'll probably preview a little bit of tonight's Collision as well. That's kind of what's on the menu for today. I'm going to go over here to the chat right now, say hello to whoever is here, let you guys know what is planned tomorrow for the watch-along and what else we have coming up this week, and then we will jump into the news, but I don't think we're going to start with news. I think we're going to start with last night's SmackDown. I kind of want to talk about that first and bust that out. That's why you see old Broski here right there on the screen. So we're going to talk about that in just 1 second. But before we do, let me make sure. All right, if you guys couldn't hear me, you would have told me by now. Let's see who is here in the chat. We've got Melissa, we got Zane G, Mike Rouse, Garrett Osborne, James Kowalski, or Kowaleski. I should learn to pronounce that properly. Damian Drain is here as well. David Brown, William Cullen, my boy Ryan Adams in the house. Runaway Train Gaming, welcome to the family. Thanks for joining. We've got, lost my place already. There we go. Brian Spencer, good to see you. Freddie Twang, good to see you. Zach, chiming in with the $5. Watch. Solo Sikoa's opponent on Raw is going to be Dolph Ziggler, just to be real different because everybody's expecting Joe Hendry. I do not believe Joe Hendry will be Solo Sikoa's opponent. I don't. I think Joe Hendry is going to appear on Monday, but not in that match. I think Solo's opponent is more likely to be a Ziggler or a Jeff Hardy or anybody else that you think might receive a magnificent pop in Madison Square Garden. And what I would like to actually see is Joe Hendry get an Intercontinental title shot, because he's been lobbying for a match with John Cena. I never thought it was going to happen, but due to the news that we're going to talk about with Joe Hendry later on, I think it's now possible. And I think it would be cool because John Cena's match with Dominic was kind of an impromptu deal last week. So John Cena could be in the ring cutting a promo, maybe even talking about putting his Intercontinental title on the line. And in his dialogue, while he's speaking, he just happens to say the words in order, say his name. Like maybe he's talking about somebody else. Maybe he's talking about Dominic, and I thought about coming out here and calling out Dominic, and I thought if I said his name that he, and if he just says say his name in any sort of context in his promo, and as soon as he says that, Hendry's music plays. The Garden fucking freaks. He comes out, he gets an Intercontinental title shot and loses. And in the same year, Joe Hendry wrestled big matches against Randy Orton and John Cena, two of the biggest stars of this era or this generation in WWE and of all time. And he gets to work with them both. John Cena in his third to last match and Randy Orton at WrestleMania. I think Joe Hendry should get an Intercontinental title shot on Monday night. I do. But Ziggler would also be cool because they brought back Zack Ryder, who's been, going by his name, Matt Cardona, reinventing himself as Matt Cardona. Nick Nemeth kind of doing the same thing, but if they brought him back in, we'd probably hear the Dolph Ziggler music. So maybe Solo's opponent could be Dolph. And if that was, I think that would be fun and probably get a big pop. And Dolph just might advance in that because Solo is involved in that big, we're going to get a traditional Survivor Series match at Survivor Series with Solo and the MFTs against the whole slew of babyfaces on SmackDown. So there could be some major interference there, and Dolph could advance. It's possible. I like the idea, but I also think it could be a couple of other options as well, other than Dolph. Good to see Colin Wright in the house. Jimmy Anderson, good evening, my friend. Steve Jacobson is here as well. We have Ben Espinoza in the house. Zane G chiming in with his 5. Cena winning the IC title can be comparable to The Undertaker winning the Hardcore title in 2001. Yeah, kind of. It's bizarre that he won it, but I'm so glad that he did. I'm not offended by it at all. I thought it was tremendous. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Good to see John. Good to see Jay, the Mac, and anybody else saying hello. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome, happy Saturday, and happy weekend to you. We got close to 2 hours to get this podcast done, so I think we can do that. But I do want to let you guys know what to look for on the channel. This past Thursday, 2 days ago on November 13th, it was the 20th anniversary of the death of Eddie Guerrero. I dropped a video talking about Eddie Guerrero's life and career that is up on the channel right now. We spoke for about an hour. And I kept it pretty casual. I was mostly going by memory. I had to jot down a few notes, but I kind of just talked about my memories. I didn't want to go by like a chapter by chapter overview of his entire life or anything like that. I just wanted to talk about my memories, what I remember of him, and some of the key matches and moments in his career that really stood out to me as a wrestling fan. And that's what we kind of discussed on Thursday. So if you have not checked that video out yet, please do. And tomorrow, we got a watch along planned. This is a show that Eddie Guerrero was supposed to wrestle in, but he died. Survivor Series 2005. We're going to be checking that one out tomorrow. This, I believe, was just, 2 weeks? How many days after Eddie Guerrero's death was Survivor Series? It was extremely fresh after Eddie Guerrero passed away, and he was supposed to be on the SmackDown team on that show. So we're going to be checking out Survivor Series 2005 tomorrow night, and on Monday night, we're going to be here again. I want to watch this Monday Night Raw in Madison Square Garden. I had a blast watching on Raw, watching this past Monday in Boston. Put up a YouTube short of me reacting to Cena's victory, and hopefully we'll have some fun festivities on Monday in the Garden. So we will be here to watch that on Monday. I don't have a link up for that yet, but I will put one up probably like tonight or tomorrow or something like that. So keep a lookout for that. You've got me for the next 3 days, tonight, tomorrow, and Monday night. So that's pretty much it for the scheduling, I say we jump into last night's SmackDown. We're going to start by talking about SmackDown. By addressing some news that broke yesterday. I believe WrestleVotes was originally the ones who broke this or had tweeted this, but I didn't have anybody specifically credited here. But WWE continues to prove that they just fucking hate their audience because they are moving SmackDown back to 3 hours again starting in January. Now, this is presumably because of Mania season and Rumble season, giving Raw and SmackDown ample amount of time to build these issues. I would, on the surface, normally have no problem with that, but SmackDown has been a big stinking ball of donkey shit, and I don't want 3 hours. I don't want an extra hour of donkey shit. I just don't. Even though it's Mania season, what? So, how many years have we come up here on reviews and podcasts, and I've said something to the effect of, man, this does not feel like Mania season. These shows are boring. Mania season doesn't really mean anything. You're going to get some big moments here or there on Raw and SmackDown to set up your Mania matches and whatnot, but overall, the shows are not as fun as they used to be leading up to WrestleMania. And oftentimes we find ourselves saying, like, boy, for Mania season, you would expect this Raw or expect this SmackDown to be a little bit better. And now SmackDown is going back to 3 hours. It's fucking waterboard torture. And I am glad that I'm not home on Friday nights and I'm always at work. So whenever I watch SmackDown anyway, I catch the replay or I catch YouTube clips or I read the results and do a combination of both. I am not watching this bullshit straight through. No fucking way. And I'm not going to be doing that when it returns to 3 hours either. So 3 hour SmackDowns starting back in January. Yes. I can only assume it's probably going to be temporary, maybe through mid-year. But if the numbers are good and USA's happy with it, then they might just continue the 3 hour SmackDowns. And I wouldn't care if shit's like on fire. If you got a white hot product, sure, give me 3 hours. I'm not a pussy. I'll take it. But if it sucks, why, I just love that of all the problems that goes on, especially right now with WWE's creative, they seem to think that the answer is something like this, if we made the show longer, then the show would be better. No, it's going to be worse, and it's just going to turn your audience off more. So priorities are completely out of whack in the TKO era of WWE, and very little of what they do makes any fucking sense at all. It's crazy. Like, I was so happy to be rid of Vince. I still think he's an evil asshole who I hope, meets his maker one day and faces the consequences for the horrible fucking things he has done. But I wouldn't really consider WWE better off without Vince, at least right now. It felt that way for the first couple of years. This idiot is gone. He was a maniac. He was a moron. He was a dipshit. He didn't even remember. He didn't know what the fuck he was doing, and he was making everything horrible. Triple H is younger, a little bit better grasp on things, but as things have progressed and evolved now into the TKO and Endeavor era, you can really see that WWE does not give a shit, number one, about its fans or its wrestlers or anything. They are the MAGA of pro wrestling and just drunk on power. They think that the boom period they think they're still in the middle of it. They think it's never ending, despite the fans, becoming more and more critical. We've seen a major dip in ratings, a major dip in attendance, and yet there they are. Everything's fine, because their revenues are still kicking ass, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Pleasing the fans is not the top priority for WWE. Getting their shareholders as much money as possible is. Making that stock price as high as possible. Bringing in record revenue every year. Each year they want to beat the revenue that they got the previous year. They are looking to break records every single fucking year, and that is the top priority before anything else. I would put the fans' satisfaction and the fans' happiness probably 5th, 6th, or 7th on their fucking priority list. That's how little we matter to them. So when it comes to things like 3 hour SmackDowns and Triple H say, we listen to the audience are in charge. No, we're not. No, we're not. TKO is. And you guys are going to do what you want to do, regardless of how bad or good your product is. And now we're moving into this era of 2-night SummerSlams and 2-night Manias and these multi-night extravaganzas. Before you know it, we're going to have a 3-night fucking Payback at some point. And they're going to just oversaturate their own product and just water it down and just continue to give us too much. One of the best things about the old days of the Attitude Era, 1997, 1998, all those years when Raw was really cooking and just good. when the show was over, you wished it wasn't over. Where now, you're glad it's fucking over because you're hungry and you're tired and you're sick of it. And it's just a completely different mentality now from a fan's perspective watching this stuff. So 3-hour SmackDowns, good luck, guys, for those of you who sit through that shit every single Friday, because if they pre-announce a kick-ass SmackDown and you got multiple title matches and we got big angles dropping, I will be right there for all 3 hours. But otherwise, these shows, ugh. And last night wasn't bad. Last night was a better show, I think, maybe than last week's, because last week's was just so empty, just felt so lifeless. And now, last night's was a little bit better. Granted, we're in the build to Survivor Series, so it feels like there is no SmackDown and Raw. Raw people are on SmackDown. SmackDown people are on Raw. And last night, we opened up with Raw people. Rhea Ripley and Io Sky opened up SmackDown. And at the closing moments of Raw on Monday, we saw the big setup as the Kabuki Warriors won the tag team titles, correct? I have that right? They beat Alexa and Charlotte, right, for the titles. And there's the big brawl after the match that set up your War Games. So it looked like it was going to be Alexa and Charlotte teaming up with Io and Rhea to take on the Kabukis and Lash Legend and Nia Jax. Well, last night on SmackDown, Ripley and Io open up the show, cutting a promo. Out comes Alexa and Charlotte, and in a really bizarre type of move, Charlotte decides that because of all of her history with Rhea Ripley, she said there's too much history here. It's been years. There's too much history between her and Rhea Ripley, the 2 WrestleMania matches they've had. There's too much kind of bad blood or animosity or bitter feelings there, and she says she just can't do it, and she walks away. So that's kind of weird. I was like, what the hell is this about? The only thing I can imagine that the only reason they're doing this is just to create tension on the babyface side. I don't know if Charlotte is going to be legitimately out of War Games. I think she's going to come around, or she's going to be convinced to join. Maybe Alexa talks her into it. Maybe Rhea Ripley has a conversation with her, or whatever it is. It sounds like maybe Charlotte will wind up being a reluctant participant in this. And now that they're not champs anymore, maybe she's looking to break out on her own. I kind of still think we're going to get Charlotte versus Jade Cargill on Saturday night's main event when John Cena retires. I feel like that's a match we might get. But in terms of War Games, I think Charlotte will probably find her way into the match, unless for some reason she's injured and we don't know about it, or whatever. But Charlotte is now out, seemingly putting that team down a woman, because now it's 4 against 3. But we did get confirmation that the War Games matches are going to be 5-on-5, so each team is going to get another member. So I imagine that Charlotte will wind up joining the team. And then in terms of the other 2 War Games participants, I don't know what you do with the champions. You've got Jade Cargill and Stephanie Vaquer. Neither one of them are booked for Survivor Series yet, correct? Do you think they could add the champs? Because we've got the champs in War Games on the men's side. We've got Cody and Punk on the same side, actually. So maybe Stephanie and Jade enters War Games as champions and rounds out those 5. I don't know. I haven't really been thinking about it. So whoever you think the 5th women on each team or 5th woman on each team will be, let me know who you think that could be. Also, backstage later on, as Ripley and Io are asking Alexa, what up with Charlotte? And she's like, I don't know. They were all attacked by the heels. So the Kabukis and Nia and Lash, they attacked the babyfaces backstage and put a hurting on them. Nikki and Stephanie. Oh, okay. Yeah. Nikki and Stephanie. Nikki will join the heels, right? Stephanie will join the babyfaces. I'd rather see that than a Nikki Bella title shot, which we could get. I mean, Nikki Bella at least used to live here. I've met Nikki Bella here in San Diego twice. I've just ran into her. So she used to live here. She might not anymore. I don't know where the fuck she lives. But she is it would be kind of a hometown-ish thing for Nikki if she got a title shot at Petco against Stephanie. But I don't want that match at Survivor Series. Just don't. I don't think Nikki's very good. So Nikki and Stephanie joining War Games sounds great. I think that's a good idea from Ryan. We also had the continuation of John Cena's Last Time Is Now tournament. Jey Uso taking on The Miz. My God, you talk about a match that I can't wait to not watch. I did not watch that match. I only looked at the result. I could not watch Jey Uso and The Miz. I can't. I can't watch it. I got home last night. Tito took a big fat shit in the litter box. And if I would have put on Jey Uso versus The Miz while I was smelling that stuff, I don't even think I'd be up here talking today. It would have been too much. So no, I did not watch Jey and Miz. Did not care about Jey and Miz. Don't give a fuck who wins that. Jey did. Any advances in the tournament, good for him. We had another United States Open Challenge with Dragunov, this time defeating Axiom. So another great match. These Dragunov matches, they're the highlight of SmackDown every week. He's probably... I kind of hope they run with this for a while because I thoroughly enjoyed, as a fan, John Cena's U.S. Open challenges, U.S. title Open challenges back in the day. I thought Sammy did a tremendous job for a few weeks that he had the belt. But if Dragunov keeps going, I would think he could be the best one to do this, basically, because he's just such a tough motherfucker, and just him taking on everybody and coming out winning. This is a guy that beat Gunther, don't forget. So, at some point, Gunther and Dragunov are going to have a collision, and that could happen maybe even as soon as WrestleMania if you wanted. Now, Gunther could face Goldberg or whatever. I'm not Goldberg, but Brock, since he's, retiring a lot of people. At some point, they got to do Dragunov and Gunther, and I think the longer you build Dragunov up, the more he makes a really good opponent for Gunther in the future. So if Gunther goes on to retire John Cena and then has another big match at WrestleMania, maybe beating Brock Lesnar. This entire time, Dragunov is still just destroying people for the United States title, and then you put them on a collision course for, I don't know, a Crown Jewel or a SummerSlam or whatever. But Dragunov and Gunther, also maybe one of them Clash shows. If they do some clashes next year, where are these guys from? Where's Dragunov from? From like Moscow, right? And then Gunther's from where? Not Bulgaria, Germany. Where the fuck's Gunther from? So anyway, somewhere over there, you book a clash in wherever the fuck, and you do Gunther and Dragunov. Imagine that match like in London or, even in Paris or something like that. So I think that match, whenever it does happen, Gunther and Dragunov should be an overseas show whenever that goes down. Sami Zayn, last night on SmackDown, he kind of lures the MFTs into a big brawl. He's in the ring. All the MFTs come out there in their little face paint and whatnot. And Sammy is joined by Rey Fenix and Shinsuke Nakamura and the Motor City Machine Guns. There's a big brawl. They run off the heels, and it looks like they're setting up here a good old-fashioned 5-on-5 Survivor Series elimination match at Survivor Series. I'm fine with that. I was 10 years old when the first one happened, and we're watching that a week from tomorrow, by the way. 1 week from tomorrow, Survivor Series 1987. Link is already up. We're watching that next Sunday. But traditional 5-on-5 there, I'm cool with that. It'll probably open the show. Or actually, maybe not. War Games. One of the War Games will open the show. But it's going to be fun. And I'm glad that we're getting a traditional match at Survivor Series. And we also had, of course, the other John Cena tournament match. It was LA Knight versus a mystery partner. Now, they've been pulling these balls out of the thing or whatever, and last week Nick Aldis pulled out a ball, and he's like, I'm going to wait till next week. So LA Knight couldn't even prepare for his opponent, and a lot of people thought it was going to be Joe Hendry because of the news that we're going to talk about here in a minute regarding Joe Hendry. But I wasn't so sure. I thought it could be Joe Hendry, but I think also if Joe Hendry would have came out on SmackDown last night, this is a guy that gets a tremendous pop in there with another guy that gets a tremendous pop. I think Hendry should lose if he faced LA Knight. And I also thought that maybe Hendry would have a more fun ovation or fun pop if he came out in Madison Square Garden as a surprise. And that's why I don't like Hendry as a participant in the tournament. I'd rather have him come out just in the middle of a segment somewhere. And a segment with John Cena on Monday, I think would be perfect. Like I said earlier, if John Cena happens just to be talking and in whatever sentence he says, the words say his name happen to come in a row, and then you immediately cue his music and he comes out and we get an impromptu title match between Cena and Hendry, and Cena beats him. And then Hendry gets to say, hey, I worked with Randy Orton and John Cena, in the same year in two huge matches. One was at WrestleMania and one was the third to last match that John Cena ever had in his life. And I got that opportunity. And I never really thought that, Hendry, I'll talk about Hendry later, about, what I think his stardom could be or his star power could be. But one of the things I thought that was holding him back is that he's still locked up with TNA for so long. But now that that's not the case, I think there's a really good chance we are going to see him on Monday night. So him coming out in this match with LA Knight, I started thinking wasn't very likely, and it did wind up being Zack Ryder. So they brought back Zack Ryder after, for the past, 10 years, he's been trying to establish himself as Matt Cardona. He comes back as Zack Ryder. They play the music fans go nuts. He gets in there and has a pretty decent match with LA Knight. He loses, gets BFT'd and loses. And he did the picture backstage, not only with his wife, Chelsea Green, but he also got the picture with Triple H with the pointing. But Zack Ryder has not signed with the WWE. Apparently, he has not signed a deal with them. Last night was a one-off, although we probably will see him again. And he did come out as Zack Ryder, not Matt Cardona. And I guess the reason for that is they dropped some merch. So at least he'll get some money out of this, because if they put Zack Ryder merch up on WWE Shop, he's probably going to sell a shitload of those shirts. But I also think that with all of the time that he's put in as Matt Cardona, he should have came out as Matt Cardona. He could have still done the music and the logo, just have Cardona instead of Ryder on there or something, just so they can acknowledge that, the formerly known as Zack Ryder is now Matt Cardona. I kind of maybe wished it was that, but, fans were watching back in 2012, and they probably got, especially young fans who might have been 12 back then who are 24 now, probably popped pretty hard for Zack Ryder coming out. So I didn't really have too much of an issue with him being Zack Ryder, but I kind of wish he would have been Cardona. You know what I mean? But he took the loss there to LA Knight. Hopefully we will see more of Zack Ryder coming up in the future, because he has been extremely vocal about wanting to come back to WWE. He's made that extremely clear. He really wants to come back to the company. And hopefully he had an outing last night good enough to where Triple H or whoever will give him another shot. I mean, Chelsea just signed a new deal, so she's going to be there for a while, and Chelsea's stock is rising exponentially in the company, so maybe she can use some of her pull to help her hubby out. But still cool to see Zack Ryder. Glad he finally got a match back on WWE TV, which was awesome, and happy for him. So LA Knight advances in the tournament. Still no brackets, really, so I have no idea who LA Knight is facing next, but we have had pretty much all 16 competitors now I think announced for this. I think the only one, I saw a list, I didn't write the list down, but I saw a list of everybody who's been in the tournament so far, and it's 15, and then 16 is the mystery opponent that Solo's facing on Monday. So it sounds like the entire field, we've seen it now, with the exception of one more person on Monday night. So we'll see how this goes. Still think it's going to be Gunther, though, because Gunther winning it, I should say, because it should be Gunther. Also, last night on SmackDown, Jade Cargill defeated B-Fab, so she's still that bitch. And in the main event, this was set up backstage when Heyman was back there. Heyman was all over the show. At one point he told Aldis, he was kind of, setting up what we would see here in the main event, saying that he can pick from anybody under the WWE umbrella to be in War Games. So he was kind of letting Aldis know that. And we get Cody and Bronson Reed backstage. They get in each other's faces. Basically, an impromptu title match is set up. So WWE title on the line in the main event. Cody Rhodes defending against Bronson Reed. But you kind of knew with War Games that we weren't going to get any sort of a finish here at all. We did not. It was a no contest. After the War Games teams interfered, Jimmy Uso has joined War Games, as we kind of thought he might. And he was out there helping out during the brawl. And I think Jay was going up for a splash on Logan Paul, who's set up on the table. And that's when McIntyre shows up and shoves off Jay. And McIntyre puts down Cody, starts beating people up. And he is now joining the Vision. And Aldis comes out there. He's pissed. Last week he was suspended. And he's coming out there screaming and yelling. And Heyman's like, hey, I said I can pick from anywhere. Anyone under the WWE umbrella or currently signed to the company is eligible to join War Games, and I picked Drew McIntyre. So I guess the suspension meant nothing, and by Heyman just simply picking Drew McIntyre just nullifies the entire suspension. So I don't know why. Like, if they were trying to set up a surprise here, they basically suspended McIntyre. I'm assuming here, I have no idea, but I think because I was seeing a lot of this online, McIntyre's filming another movie, so they suspended him so he can go film a movie. Because on Monday night, I tweeted out that I think McIntyre is going to join War Games. I had like 3 people saying, Drew's filming a movie. I'm like, I read the same fucking internet as you. I know that, but he can still do War Games. It doesn't matter if he's filming a movie or not. He can make it happen. They can probably work something out. Plus, it feels likely that he will be in it since the Cody and Drew angle is not over. And Cody just joined the babyface team. So I was just using logic that it's probably going to be Drew. Nope, I read on the internet he's filming a movie. Well, he might be, but he's still going to be on the War Games team because that felt obvious. So now we're 4-on-4. It's what? Punk, Cody, and the Usos on one side, and you've got the Vision, or you got the Bronze Then you've got Logan, you've got Drew on the other. So it's going to be 5-on-5. And we're supposed to be getting 5-on-5, which means one more man to each team is going to be added. Now, I definitely thought that Roman Reigns would be on the babyface team. I still think that's going to happen. I think this Monday on Raw in Madison Square Garden, we might see both things happen. We might see Roman join. We also might see Brock Lesnar come out, because if Roman's joining Cody and Punk and company, who joins the Vision? It's got to be Brock, right? They've already done the teases for this. They've kind of teased Brock. Heyman came out and did his introduction when he returned and all of that stuff. So it feels like it's going to be Brock, right? Feels like it's going to be Brock. And that's going to be a really interesting match if it does turn out to be Brock. It's going to be crazy if it turns out to be Brock. I don't know. I suppose Cena could join the War Games, but I don't want to see that happen. I've got different plans for John Cena. So next week on SmackDown, we've got the tournament continuing. We've got Bronson Reed taking on Carmelo Hayes and Finn Balor taking on Penta. So those are both... It's a lot of Raw guys on SmackDown next week in those John Cena tournament matches. So that's kind of what we had go down on SmackDown last night. Not a terribly eventful show, a little bit better than last week, and it was cool to see Zack Ryder come back. And we've got the men's War Games teams mostly finished, and they'll probably get finished off this Monday on Raw. Now, last Monday on Raw, we were here, of course, to watch John Cena win the Intercontinental Championship in just a super fun match against Dominic Mysterio, impromptu match to open up the show. John Cena wins the title. And this is an idea I had a couple of weeks ago. And I kind of had it for MSG, but Boston also would have worked. My pitch weeks ago was for John Cena to beat Dominic for the Intercontinental title, giving him the one title he's never won, and then you run it back at Survivor Series and have Dominic Mysterio win it back from him. And I think there's a really good chance that's going to happen. Now, on Monday night, Cena won the belt. It was so wonderful. Humongous pop. Now he's Intercontinental Champion going into this Monday's Raw at Madison Square Garden. So I believe that Cena should have a match. I can't imagine him showing up there and not wrestling. He's got to have a match, especially since he's now champion. So I think it's going to be an impromptu Intercontinental Championship match against somebody. I think maybe Dominic comes out first. You know how I just said the thing earlier about how, you know, if Cena is speaking some of his lines of dialogue in his promo and somehow he happens to say the words, say his name in a row, if he's talking about somebody else or just talking about something in general. You could also do that with Dom. You know, Cena could come out there with the title. He's interrupted by Dom. And, you know, and Dom, of course, wants a shot. I think like Ray is going to get involved in this too somehow. But Dom is going to want a title shot. And then John Cena is going to want a title shot against John Cena, and maybe Dom is the one that accidentally says the words, say his name, and then Hendry comes out and steals the title shot away from Dom, and then Dom winds up getting the shot at Survivor Series. You could also do John Cena versus Rey Mysterio in Madison Square Garden if you wanted to, but I think John Cena is going to have an Intercontinental Championship match at Raw in Madison Square Garden. And I really hope that whatever he does there, he retains and he keeps the title. And I really hope he takes the title into Survivor Series to face Dominic Mysterio again. Unless they chuck Cena in the War Games and it's not going to be Roman, and you got Cena and Brock on opposite ends of the War Games matches, maybe they do that. But I would rather see Cena face Dominic one-on-one here at Petco Park for the title and Dominic winning it back. I think that would be tremendous. But for this Monday's Raw, Cena's going to have to work with somebody, and I think Joe Hendry could be a really, really good option there and a better option than being the mystery partner against Solo Sikoa, because we have one John Cena tournament match. There might be two. I think just one. We got Solo Sikoa versus the Mystery Man tomorrow night, which I think, like Zach said earlier, could be like a Dolph Ziggler. That would be great. A Jeff Hardy would also be great. Anybody from TNA or somebody that's been out, I think would be a better option than Hendry, because I want Hendry to get the big ovation and I want him to get the big pop, and I think it's better if it's more of a surprise, because if he's the mystery partner, then you know he's coming, because Solo's going to come out first and then we're going to get Hendry. I think it would be more fun if Hendry just randomly showed up. Like what I would do is I would have Hendry show up like before the match happens. Before they do Solo and whoever, have Hendry come out. Like maybe it's John Cena and Joe Hendry opening up the show or something, just like last week. And then you do the Solo match later. Because if they do the Solo match first and then it turns out not to be Hendry and John Cena has not yet come out yet, fans I think are going to sniff that out and be like, oh, Joe Hendry's going to come out and challenge John Cena or something like that. So I feel like whatever Hendry does on Monday, have him come out before the Solo Sikoa match. And we will see. Also, I believe on Raw, don't we have the Becky Lynch and Maxine Intercontinental Championship match as well? I'd love to see Maxine win that. I believe that's Monday, right? They're not saving that for Survivor Series or Saturday Night's Main Event. That's Monday night. I think they set that up last Monday. So, yeah, big Monday Night Raw coming up this Monday, Madison Square Garden. We will be here to watch it together. Can't wait. All right, let's now kind of transition into some wrestling news. I usually open up with wrestling news, but I kind of wanted to start with SmackDown just so we could talk about the War Games stuff and SmackDown moving to 3 hours here next year. But we have some news to get into as well. And for some reason, what was it? Thursday night on TNA Impact, Mike Santana, just after winning the championship, he just won the title. Bound for Glory, right? Wins the championship and then makes it to the very first set of TV tapings and drops the championship to Kazarian. And this baffled a lot of wrestling fans. Nobody knows what the hell to make of this. It seemed kind of out of nowhere. It seemed like Santana was done dirty. He didn't even get a chance to run with the title after he fell short at Slammiversary. Then he finally wins at Bound for Glory. You can see that it truly means the world to him. He had his family there. It was just this wonderful moment. And then they beat him and take the title off of him. So the first thing I'm thinking is that something's wrong. Maybe Santana is hurt. Or maybe, like we're going to talk about with Joe Hendry, maybe they are facilitating a move to WWE. Maybe they want to get Santana as a full-time contracted star. He's going to drop the TNA title, but you don't really need to do that when you have a working agreement. You can take your time taking the title off of him, even if you want to sign him to the company or you do a buyout situation. Then you can have him drop the title. It just felt like really soon, really abrupt type of thing. And if they went through all this trouble to put the TNA title on him, I would have at least, it's not like I'm against a short run or anything, but this thing was literally a cup of coffee. And it was kind of alarming to fans. Like, what's going on? What is this about? And then TNA, who, no matter who is in charge, who owns this company, they cannot stop stepping on their own dicks. I don't know what it is. It just does not matter who's in charge. It's LOL TNA. They can't get out of their own way. And that finish, nothing against Kazarian. Everybody loves Kaz. And him winning the TNA championship is fine, in a vacuum. But it was like how it went down and how Santana had literally no run at all after he had worked so hard to get there. So fans are thinking something is up. And then TNA decides that they want to try to work the audience over this. They made a claim that Mike Santana is not answering his phone calls and he no-showed a meet and greet and didn't show up to Turning Point. And they leaked this information out to the media to try to deliberately work or mislead the audience of these publications. And it's just really weird. Sean Ross Sapp called this out instantly as a work, and he said it was the first time that someone in an official capacity had reached out and provided a worked angle in an effort to specifically work their audience. And they should have, if this is going to be this type of story, they should just post it on Twitter rather than sending it and feeding it to the media, because that's not how Fightful operates, and a lot of other media outlets were calling this out as well. So if they were attempting to gain sympathy and trying to turn this title loss into building fan support for Mike Santana, kind of like the Yes movement and stuff. And now these promotions and these promoters start getting these ideas that, hey, if we book somebody really shitty or we do something really shitty to them, that can increase their popularity rather than just booking them well from the start. So we've seen this happen a few times where wrestling companies, WWE has done this, or they try to get sympathy from someone because of behind the scenes type of stuff. But this was executed horribly. And the minute they tried to send out this bullshit, Sean Ross Sapp was one of the first ones to call him out. No, this is a work. This is a work. You can't feed this to us, and then we're going to report it to our listeners and our subscribers and our audience as these are actual things that are happening. Mike Santana is not in any sort of, he's not going through any sort of backstage issues with TNA over this. Still don't understand why he dropped the title, but they're trying to make it sound like he's upset that he was booked bad, and so he's not showing up, and, that's unprofessional. Mike Santana is, he's been doing great. He's been getting a lot of, his stock is rising too in pro wrestling. WWE has got their eye on him. This is not something he would want to do if he has aspirations to get a big money contract from WWE whenever his TNA time runs up. This is not the behavior that will usually get you those type of things. So it's a work. It's been a work right from the start, but it is weird that he lost the championship in just a really, really kind of silly booking decision. Unless there's more to this than meets the eye, if there was an actual reason why they did this, then fine. But it felt like it wasn't like that. So we'll see, if Santana, like Hendry, is going to be coming over to WWE, I guess that's why they did it. But I still don't think they needed to do it that quick, especially when he just beat Trick. Didn't he beat Trick for it? So he just beat an NXT guy for it, and then just drop it right back to a TNA guy. It felt like the Mike Awesome Taz ECW title situation, sort of. So we'll see what happens there, but all the best to Santana. I was really happy he won the TNA championship, and I feel bad that he had to drop it that quick. So we will see if he jumps to WWE full-time to join Joe Hendry. So Joe Hendry officially is in WWE now. Sounds like WWE must have bought out his TNA contract, because one of the reasons why I haven't been too terribly excited about Joe Hendry. I like that he got over. I thought the song was fun. I think he's a fun wrestler, but I just did not see this future of pro wrestling that some fans see in him. I think fans get a little bit excited sometimes when somebody gets over, and you just have to see if things last. Now, it's been a while since Hendry released the song, and he's been, he's pretty beloved by the wrestling audience, and in the ring, he's good. He's got a good size. He's got a good look. He's good on the mic, good song, all of that. But there's nothing really about him that super stands out. He's not a better wrestler than most, and he's got an average look, and the song is great, and I like him, and you never know what's going to get someone over sometimes. If somebody hits it big and they get over for a silly reason, I'm all for pushing them. But I'm not convinced yet that Hendry is like this future of pro wrestling. And on top of that, he had some time left on his TNA deal. So in my mind, over the past year, I said this around WrestleMania time too, I said by the time Hendry is contractually able to go to WWE, it's going to be over. I think his popularity seems like there's a shelf life with the song, and there's only so much of that you can do. But it sounds like he is officially in WWE. Here's what Fightful Select had to say about that this week, and I quote, "Joe Hendry's days in TNA are pretty well over. Sources confirmed to Fightful this week that former TNA star Joe Hendry is effectively done with the company in an official capacity." And there's a good reason for that, because he's officially a WWE superstar. Hendry is not listed internally to appear on this weekend's TNA shows, though people we spoke to said it wouldn't be a surprise to see him drop by backstage as he's living in the area. Hendry was not booked for Bound for Glory and was not backstage, which surprised a number of people we spoke to. WWE sources confirmed that Hendry is effectively full-time with WWE at this point and officially with the company, and has been someone they've wanted to bring in for a while. Shawn Michaels had been vocal about how much he liked Joe Hendry and wanted WWE to try to buy out his TNA deal. There are actually a number of months that remained on his TNA contract, but he's now with WWE moving forward. Throughout the process of navigating both companies, Hendry used representation to amicably move forward in his future with WWE. And John Alba earlier this year was one of the first ones to report that Hendry was going to be going to WWE. But that was kind of obvious because we saw him getting over, working agreement with TNA and WWE. Obviously, they're going to want him. And he did have many months left. And it sounds like they did get him out of that. And Joe Hendry went through the right processes professionally to get this done with no hard feelings. So Joe Hendry is now in WWE. officially, which means I really think we can see him on Monday Night Raw now that he's there, not as a TNA star, but as a WWE wrestler. I can see him getting a match with John Cena a lot more now than I did if he was just part of the working agreement and he wasn't really technically working there. But Hendry getting a match with Cena, I think is likely. I think we might see that on Raw on Monday for the Intercontinental title. So we'll watch it together and find out. Chris Jericho, he invited the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys on to Talk is Jericho, to talk about their times together and, their most recent match at Bound for Glory. And it sounds like before Jericho's contract has even expired with AEW, he is jumping on the anti-AEW grift train. And I feel like he's going to be full-blown in this as soon as that he signs his contract with WWE, because I cannot stand Bully Ray. I just think he's the absolute fucking worst. He's got the worst opinions, the most douchey perspectives on everything. And he's just a fucking company shill. He's just a WWE shill. That's all he is. He's so full of shit. He's so transparent, and he's laughably full of shit where you're not even offended by what he says. You're like, God damn, can this guy be more obvious? This nut gargling that he does of WWE. So Jericho has got the Hardys and the Dudleys there, and he was talking about Bound for Glory. And he says, and I quote, "That crowd looked huge. It looked huge. It was like a WWE level crowd. The place was packed. I was watching this and not saying anything out of school here, but comparing it to watching Dynamite when they were at the ECW arena." He picks that show out instead of Blood and Guts that had a tremendous crowd on Wednesday, just as much as SmackDown pulled a couple of weeks ago. SmackDown and Dynamite had like the same crowd. So comparing it to watching Dynamite when they were at the ECW arena, which looked like a Tony Condello taping. Tony Condello, an old Manitoba wrestling promoter and a guy who had a lot of heat with Roddy Piper. He goes, "Sorry, it did. TNA looked like the second biggest company in the world." There's that again. And that was amazing. And the presentation was amazing. The presentation was not amazing. The presentation was not even that good. That's my problem with this bullshit. Oh, they look like the second biggest company. The fuck they do. They are a WWE adjacent company with a working agreement with them that gets to use that WWE rub to help them build a 7,000 person crowd. Like the biggest attendance number they've ever drawn is like 7,700 or something like that. What the fuck is Jericho talking about? The second biggest company, and their production is not great. They've got some of the WWE stuff. They got the little LED things spinning around the arena and whatnot, and they've got okay camera use and stuff, but everything still looks kind of low budget. The little pre-show and kickoff show just looks rinky-dink to me, and it looks second rate. But that's TNA. That's okay. I had no problem with that. But this belief that they're going to be the second biggest company, no. I mean, unless WWE floods it with all their main roster stars and they just absorb TNA like they did with NXT and it just becomes a branch of them, then sure, maybe, but like AEW has done a hell of a lot more business, a hell of a lot more attendance, and had a lot more success in a short amount of time than TNA ever did. Plus, their TV media rights deals is worth far more than any TV deal that TNA gets. When you looked at the numbers that TNA was likely to get, it's a fraction of AEW. So if they want to be the number two, it's going to take a lot of work to get there. But Jericho is already starting with this shit. But that's okay, because when he was in AEW, he was the same way. The demo god, remember in the beginning there when they were getting high ratings on Dynamite and he was throwing shade at WWE. So that's just the way Jericho is. He's always going to go to bat for the team he's playing for. So you can't really fault him for that, but I just laughed. I'm like, oh my God, saying this shit to Bubba Dudley, oh, they look like the second biggest company. Guess what? They're not. But Jericho, if you need any more confirmation that he's coming back to WWE, there you go, because he basically already has a foot in the door and he's already jumping on this train. Now, granted, he had the Hardys and the Dudleys on his show. He's got Bubba there, one of the greatest and douchiest bullshitters in the entire fucking community. So he's probably just speaking like you would speak to your friends and putting them over, making them feel good or whatever, but we'll see any more comments that he makes in the future. But I have a feeling once he shows back up in WWE, he's going to probably throw passive-aggressive shade at AEW any chance he gets. I wouldn't be surprised at all. So Jericho heading back to WWE, I guess next year, 2026, probably the Rumble in Saudi and probably a Mania match. That would be my guess. Here's a fun story. So remember when Sting retired a couple of years ago and his two sons came out to the ring with him, or they accompanied him to the ring dressed as the Surfer Sting and NWO Sting. And his sons both are big boys. They both look exactly like him. And his son, Steve Borden, is going to be making his independent wrestling debut on Friday, November 21st at Washington Hall in Seattle. And it's going to mark his first appearance for an independent promotion. His debut was like at an art show or something. But now he actually is going to be getting his first indie booking. And he's been training with Darby Allin as well. So he's been working directly with Darby to get him ready. And they certainly have the look. I can't believe they didn't get into wrestling right from the beginning because he's a big boy. Look at him. Looks just like his dad. It's crazy. So I'm really, really rooting for this kid to make it. And I hope he turns out to be a great professional wrestler. Rooting for him hard. All the best to Steve Borden in your pro wrestling career. I really hope he makes it to the point where he can get signed to a deal to an AEW or something, and he can continue on his father's legacy. And much like Dominic is carrying it on for Rey Mysterio, and you got Brian Pillman Jr. trying to carry it on for Brian. He's not doing as good though. And Sting having one of Sting's sons, wrestle, and you can really see the fathers and the sons sometimes when they wrestle. I think that would just be fun, especially for fans my age. So all the best to Steve Borden. I hope that we get to see him on the big time here in the next couple of years. Here's a little bit of a clarification on a story we talked about, I guess it was last week, because Mark Shapiro, he had made some comments about TKO needing to get past the Vince McMahon created PLEs and whatnot. And this led to a lot of fans speculating that when they were talking about wanting to make WrestlePalooza a big brand and wanting to move away from some of the Vince McMahon era stuff, a lot of fans were like, why would you fuck with Royal Rumble and SummerSlam and WrestleMania and Survivor Series and all of these brands, all of these pay-per-views that fans have been watching for years? Why would you take those names away? Why would you even want to do that? Why would you want to change the branding of WrestleMania that you guys have worked so hard to establish? Well, apparently that's not the case. WWE is not going to be getting rid of any of their biggest events anytime soon anyway, and this is all according to Fightful Select. And they said, and I quote, when speaking to a WWE higher-up, they said that the belief is that is primarily for other monthly events as opposed to the tentpole franchises that were aforementioned. Specifically, they said Saudi Arabia isn't paying for WrestlePalooza, they're paying for WrestleMania. Exactly. That's why you don't want to fuck with that branding. And the value of that name and brand is the reason for that. You're building brands. So why would you change that? And this is what I talked about last week. I said, I can't imagine them changing the big four, but these in-between shows, when they're throwing balls of fires at us and paybacks and stomping grounds, name that bullshit anything you want. I don't care. I don't care. I'm not attached to any name outside of the big four. I'm not even attached to Money in the Bank. Fuck it. Don't care about it. But I am attached to Rumble, Mania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. And there was already talk about Survivor Series going away about 12 years ago or so, and Vince McMahon was talked out of it. So it sounds like the big events, the name-established brands, they're not going anywhere. But the in-between stuff, WWE might be looking to establish new brands, and this is something I'm in favor of. One of my biggest complaints is that all the pay-per-views are just so different. I really liked the day, even in the 90s they did this too, but I liked having 12 pay-per-views, and they're basically the same names every year. Rumble, No Way Out, Mania, Backlash, sometimes Judgment Day in May, King of the Ring, Money in the Bank in June. Then usually what do they do in July back in those days? Back in the Backlash. Then you could do a Fully Loaded. You could do anything. In July, then you got SummerSlam. In August, September used to be Night of Champions or fucking Breakdown, or maybe a No Mercy. No Mercy a lot was in October, Survivor Series in November, and then you had the TLCs in December. So if WWE wants to make new events for your Judgment Days and your TLCs and your Battlegrounds and your Clash of Champions and your Night of Champions, if they want to make all new stuff, then do that. Just get rid of the really, really dumb ones. Just don't ever do a Battleground again. Don't do a Payback. Don't do any of that stuff. But if you keep, Fastlane is another one. Get rid of fucking Fastlane. But if you keep Rumble, Mania, Money in the Bank, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, maybe keep a Backlash, obviously Crown Jewel, obviously Clash of Champions. I guess that's what they're talking about here. Now you got WrestlePalooza. So if they want to try to create another WrestlePalooza that fans expect every year at a certain time of year, I'm all for that. I'd rather have that than them creating lifeless, meaningless, clash in this, clash in that, whatever. So build more brands, instead of changing the pay-per-views around every year. Try to be more consistent with them. If that's the case, then great. The end of the report does say, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but at the end of it, it says the same WWE higher up noted that Indianapolis and New Orleans had future events committed to them under WrestleMania and SummerSlam banners beyond what is already announced. So SummerSlam and WrestleMania, they already have cities booked out for the future. So if they were to change the names of these pay-per-views, it wouldn't even be able to happen for a couple of years. So it sounds like at least the big four are safe. So a little bit of clarification on that. We don't have to worry about WrestleMania or Rumble being changed anytime soon. But some of the other pay-per-views or PLEs very well could be, and that is actually fine with me. Fine with me. Here's a story that almost gave me a headache. So Tegan Knox recently turned up in AEW. She's known as Nixon Newell now, and she's got somebody else with her who I don't even know, Miranda Elise. Is that how you say it? Miranda Elise, I guess. And they showed up a couple of weeks ago on Collision. You guys were tweeting me and tagging me in the tweet and saying, hey, look who just showed up on Collision. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I'm so happy about that. So Tegan Knox on Collision. Great for her. Well, apparently something happened on the last week's show. I know they had their debut. They had a promo or a little interview backstage or something, and then they were booked. They were supposedly going to be booked in a match against Anna Jay and Ty Conti. And there was a story about that they had refused to lose or something like that, and they left. They left Collision before the show was up. They were supposed to be in a match. They didn't. A couple of other girls got the opportunity instead. They were getting high praise. I don't know who either one of them were, but Twitter was very happy for them. I'm so glad they got a shot because apparently they're well known. I don't know who the fuck they were, but they ended up taking their place. And that led to the internet wondering what the hell was going on there. So everybody dug into this. Fightful Select had 3, I think, different write-ups on this, and I didn't copy and paste anything. I just kind of read through the basics of it here, and it sounded like there was some conflicting reports because it was PW Insider who initially reported that they left. Then Fightful Select followed up with a report, and then Nixon and Elise went on a Twitch stream and confirmed a little bit of what Fightful said, and they kind of clarified it as to where they didn't really walk out in a pissy frustration, but they were given, I guess, a time of 3 minutes on their match, and they felt like it would be pointless based on the promo they just cut to go out there and have a 3-minute match. They basically just didn't like the creative. They couldn't change the length of the match or something like that, so they elected just to not do the match and politely go home. But, then there was some criticisms online as well. Elise was tweeting, and then they went on their Twitch stream and mentioned a couple of things, and it sounded like they just didn't really like what was planned for them, so they took it as, oh, we have to protect ourselves and our integrity, or we don't think it'll be beneficial to us for us to go out there and have a 3-minute match after what we just said in our promo. Anything like that, I understand. From a professional standpoint, you have to do what's best for what you think is best for you. And if that's what they felt, then that's what they felt. But I think some of the handling of this could have treaded into unprofessional territory when up till that point everything was fine. So, when members of the AEW locker room were approached or reached out to for a comment, it felt like some of them really felt like this was a non-issue. Others felt like Nixon Newell they've got a case of WWE brain rot. So maybe Nixon, coming from WWE, feels that she's a little bit better than what they have planned. I don't know. I don't care enough about these two women to read 5 pages of bullshit on this. I don't know what happened. Sounds like everything's fine. They're probably not going to be brought back in or used for any reason. And of course, Tegan Knox, who the poor thing, we had to watch this girl, blow out both of her knees and have 2 long spells outside of the ring. And she's even gone on record saying that she doesn't believe she has any more than a year or so left in wrestling anyway. So if she's only going to be wrestling for a year, I don't know what the point of even being an AEW is. But that story, there was a lot to it. There was just a lot to it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to talk about this on the podcast, but I cannot dissect this and do a full deep dive because I have to care about something to do a deep dive. And I don't give a shit what these girls' problems were or what happened. I just don't care enough to really learn every detail. But that's kind of the gist of it. And if you want to look up more on that situation, you can. But it just sounds like another one of those silly things that sometimes happens in pro wrestling. And sometimes you have to stand up for yourself or do what you think is right for yourself or beneficial to yourself. All of that I understand. But there is also some people that take themselves maybe a little bit too seriously. So I'm not really sure. I feel like this situation falls somewhere in the middle. So all the best to Nixon and the other one. And I hope everything works out for them. I hope they have long, healthy careers, but whatever happened at AEW sounds like it just didn't work out. So we'll see if they turn up anywhere else in a main promotion anytime soon. Here's kind of a sad story. So was it last week on Raw or the week after? I don't even know who this guy is. West Side Gun, some rapper. He also owns a wrestling promotion called Fourth Rope Wrestling. He apparently was kicked out of WWE Raw after spending $5,000 on a ticket. Kicked out of Raw because WWE apparently is aware of him and what he does, and he uses a lot of WWE music and samples a lot of WWE music in his songs, apparently, or WWE theme songs in his music. And he's also been using WWE wrestlers' images on billboards to be put around New York City. And I guess all of these things caused WWE to, number one, kick him out and serve him with cease and desists on all that stuff. He posted an extremely lengthy post on Instagram where it really sounded sad when you're reading it. He's professing his lifelong love of pro wrestling. All I was trying to do is just be a fan and support culture and all of these things. Just a whole long description of what he does and what he wants to do, and it just seems so positive, But because of, I guess, his music and some of the billboards he's been putting up, WWE booted him out of Monday Night Raw, and then he turned up front row on Wednesday night at Blood and Guts. So it sounds like AEW will be glad to work with this guy and to bring him in and allow him to sit ringside without him getting kicked out. So again, I'm not very versed in mainstream rappers and stars these days or any musical artists mainstream these days, but apparently West Side Gun is a rapper. I don't know anything about him, but he was booted out of WWE, and the whole situation sounds sad and just another example of why WWE sucks. Like it seems like being evil for the sake of being evil. Why would you kick him out of your show? He paid $5,000 for his ticket. Did he get in a fight? Did he throw beer on someone? Is he being unruly? Is he breaking any of your rules that you run through before the show? Does he have a laser pointer? Like, why are we kicking him out for? And so it just seems shitty. So anyway, he might now be seen more in AEW. And he said in his Instagram post that he is done supporting WWE, never again, based on their treatment of him. So all the best to him, and fuck off, WWE. And last little tidbit of news I just have here is on MJF. We should be seeing him any minute now. He should be back sooner rather than later. And with all the injuries and all the people out like Ospreay and Swerve, AEW needs all the stars they can get. So really excited for MJF to make his way back into the fold. What else do I have for wrestling news? I guess not too much there. I do want to talk about Blood and Guts this past Wednesday. Jesus, man. So Blood and Guts Dynamite in Greensboro, by the way, pulled over 5,000 fans for this show. I mean, it's a huge stadium. They sold out Revolution. Only 5,000 fans here. But based on current pro wrestling attendance, 5,000 fans or more than 5,000 fans ain't bad. I think SmackDown just had 5 last week or something. So it ain't that bad. So Blood and Guts had a good crowd, and my God, I think these matches both delivered, especially the women's match. So the women's match was Mercedes Moné, Megan Bayne, Marina Shafir, Tekla, Julia Hart, and Sky Blue taking on Statlander, Toni Storm, Willow Nightingale, Harley Cameron, Jamie Hayter, and Mina Shirakawa. So it was a Sky Blue and Willow Nightingale start. The order was Sky and Willow, followed by Julia, followed by Harley Cameron, followed by Tekla, followed by Jamie Hayter, then Megan Bayne, then Statlander, then Mercedes, then Mina, then Marina, and then Toni Storm was out last. A lot of fun here in this one, specifically the blood. My God, all of these women bled so hard, and it was so cute. On Twitter, like after the show, you've got Statlander, Willow Nightingale, Sky Blue, I forgot who else, but they're all taking like it looks like they're in a trainer's room or something. They're laying down, basically just taking a selfie of their face covered in dried up blood. And I think the gnarliest one had to be Sky Blue. Girl bladed hard. All those women seem like they were having a blast out there with the blood. Like they don't get to do this often. Like all their gear looked great. Like Harley Cameron tweeted out this just unbelievably sexy pic backstage. Of course, she's wearing white, which is perfect for blood. And I'm like, oh, this match is going to get violent. And it was. And I think my favorite was Sky Blue, just blood all over her face, crimson mask, Eddie Guerrero at Judgment Day 2004 level blood here. And she's got this grin on her face like the blood loss is giving her energy. It was so good. I think one of my favorite spots in the match was kind of Mercedes kind of big time and everybody in there. She gets all of her championship belts, which there's like 30 of them now. And she passes them out to all her teammates to use as weapons, and they're whipping and smacking everybody. I fucking love that. Marina Shafir, you get the bed of nails, and she's got her shoes off. Toni Storm with the blood sport. I think she brought like a champagne bottle in, right? Breaks the champagne bottle in the bucket, and then she wraps her hands with reverse tape and then dips them in the glass and punching everybody in the face with her broken glass dipped hands, which I fucking loved. And the violence level in it was fun. This is stuff I don't mind, like there's a lot of fans complaining about like women bleeding and shit like that. I'm like, come on, this I think is fun and it's different, and you don't get to see the women be in these super gnarly matches very often. You get it a little bit in AEW. I remember the great Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker match from a few years ago that was great. But this is the first ever blood and guts match, and it lived up to its name. We saw blood, we saw guts, a lot of it, and these women weren't holding back. I loved how the creativity too. Julia Hart, they were climbing through the little holes in the trusses, like the connecting pieces. They're so little. They can climb through those holes. Julia Hart got out and back in through the cage that way. So if Julia Hart ever goes to prison, keep a lookout on her. She'll find a way out. So I liked a lot of the creativity that they used there, some of the spots. Seems like the women there was like this collective understanding that say, we got to deliver here. This is the first blood and guts. And if we ever want to have one of these again, we got to make sure that we can ooh and ah the crowd just as good as the men can. And they did. And maybe the finish I take that back. I liked both finishes, but maybe I liked the finish of the men's match slightly more because it was fun to see Mox tap out. But the finish here in the women's match wasn't half bad either. And one thing I feel like they did, and let me know if you noticed the same thing here. So, and the finish is the heel team basically is holding Toni Storm down. All the rest of the baby faces are down or compromised. And they're all holding Toni Storm, and they are forcing her to watch Marina Shafir holding Mina Shirakawa down while Megan Bayne continuously just whips her and whacks her with the belt. And so, excuse me. So Toni Storm is watching this, and of course, the blood and guts, it's kind of like a surrender or a tap out type of thing. And Toni Storm surrenders for Mina Shirakawa so she doesn't have to watch her friend get completely brutalized by this belt. So the heels win. I should show you this. The heels win right here. There they are. They're winning. So you see them winning there, and you have Toni Storm holding Mina Shirakawa in the ring. There's also a backstage selfie of the two just consoling each other or whatever. And so when I look at this image and I see all of the women, look at every one of them, maybe not Julia Hart. Julia Hart might have been the only one who didn't blade. Tekla, Sky Blue, and Megan Bayne did for sure, I believe, right? I think Marina did as well. She was in there with bare feet too, which is a whole nother story. And they're standing there triumphant over Mina Shirakawa and Toni Storm. And it feels like the finish of this match was probably directly a way to set up Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa winning the tag team titles, right? I feel like because of how that finish went, AEW has told you who's going to win the AEW women's tag team titles. And I'm fine with Tony and Marina. I kind of was hoping it would be Sky and Julia or something, but Tony and Marina, based on the finish of Blood and Guts, that is now my pick, my number one pick to win the women's tag team titles. I think it's going to be the two of them winning it. But the match was tremendous. Really enjoyed it. Loved the blood. Loved the violence level on it. And I think that when the women are given an opportunity to go out there and have a lot of fun like that and spill blood, I think it's tremendous. And anybody who's butthurt or offended or women shouldn't bleed like that, go fucking fly a kite, because you don't know what you're talking about. Hangman Page and Powerhouse Hobbs was fun. That was fun. It was a Falls Count Anywhere match. They didn't get too nuts here. They didn't go outside or nothing. But it was a pretty fun brawl. Really sick backdrop. And they were like on the announce table, and Hangman backdrops Hobbs, and he just lands right on his ass. Just tailbone first, man. And he almost like bounces right up because, of course, he's Powerhouse Hobbs, as we know, is 99% muscle, 1% teeth. So he lands right on his muscly ass and literally just bounces right back up. The finish sees the two of them brawl through the crowd. They're up on the balcony. And Hangman, what does he do? Take his boot off, right? Hangman takes his boot off. And they're on like the little, not the balcony, but I don't know, the little ledge there on the first level there that people take spills off of all the time. So Hobbs is kind of like teetering like that on the edge. Hangman then backs his way up the steps a little bit, takes his shoes off and gets a running start, or takes his boot off, gets a running start and slams his boot right into the face of Powerhouse Hobbs, who falls off the ledge, lands through a production crate, and sparks fly out, and the building loses power. It's kind of a nod to Royal Rumble 1999, because I remember watching that and thinking it was so silly when Mankind bumped. And like, if he landed on a speaker case or any sort of a production soundboard or any sort of equipment like that, it's not going to spark like that. And if it did, it wouldn't look like that if it did. And it wouldn't knock out power to the whole fucking building. And power like went out in half of the arena in the Royal Rumble when that happened. So it kind of reminded me of that a little bit, how the lights were flickering in the arena. Like, give me a break. But it was still a fun spot, and it gave Hangman Page the win over a very, very credible opponent. Now, this issue between them is Hangman and the Ops is not over, of course, because Hangman is going to be facing Samoa Joe at Full Gear, as we know, and that match has now been made into a cage match. Everybody was out there at the end of this, and the cage match stip was made. Hangman and Joe now going to be battling inside of Steel at Full Gear 1 week from today, which reminds me, this might be our last Saturday Wingy for a couple of weeks. I plan to be here next Saturday, 1 week from today. We're going to watch Full Gear together. I think I can afford to be off that one from work. They don't need me. So the next 2 Saturdays, we're going to be watching pay-per-views. Next Saturday, Full Gear, but the Saturday after that, 2 weeks from today, no watch along, because I'm going to be there, unless I live stream Survivor Series from my phone while I'm there. I don't know. We'll see. But next week, don't forget, Full Gear, so we have to figure out when to do podcasty type stuff. I'll probably also have to hit you guys with Full Gear predictions. I might do that in the form of a YouTube short, but we will be here next week watching and reviewing AEW Full Gear next Saturday. Looking forward to that. We also on Dynamite on Wednesday had Ricky the Dragon Steamboat show up on the show, and he had a segment with FTR. Now, Steamboat, they were in Greensboro. Steamboat and Flair were both supposed to be a part of this, but Flair got to the building or something, and something happened. He left. He was tired, or he wasn't feeling up to it. I mean, Ric Flair is very old. I mean, he's still posting videos of himself on exercise bikes and whatnot, but come on, how long can this guy really hold on? His liver, has got to look like, a raisin at this point. So I don't know how, I would imagine that getting tired or not feeling well is probably a regular thing for somebody like Ric Flair. So apparently he went home, and that meant that Steamboat had to do the angle by himself. So it was just an interview with like Shivani in the ring, and they're talking about the history of Steamboat and Flair and in Greensboro and all that stuff. And then and FTR then comes out. They start talking some smack. They wound up attacking Steamboat and are about to give him a spike pile driver, but luckily Brodito comes out and makes the save before they're able to hit it. And Steamboat even gets some shots in the end. So it sounds like, based on FTR, there was a lot of Flair speak in their promo. So it sounds like Flair was originally supposed to be a part of this angle. And I don't know what he would have done physically in there. He probably would have thrown a punch or something, but it might not have looked very good. So he might have been better off not having Flair there. But hopefully everything is is okay with Rick, and he's sending out tweets with the first letter of each word capitalized here before we know it. All the best to Ric Flair. Hope everything is okay there. And always great to see Steamboat. He's one of the few, legends that are like in his 70s or late 60s or whatever he is that, he just really kept his shit together. You never heard a bad story about Ricky Steamboat. Never got into the drugs, never got in the alcohol, never got arrested, never did jail time, never, cheated on his wife, never raped anybody. Like all these horrible things that wrestlers would get themselves into in the 1980s. Steamboat was straight as a Grizzly's dick. Awesome. So, and he still looks good, and he can still do stuff. Remember when he had the matches? When was that? 2000, when the hell did that match with Jericho happen? 2009? Like WrestleMania? Yeah, WrestleMania 25, the Mickey Rourke bullshit, right? And then he worked with Jericho at Backlash, and he looked great because he kept himself in shape, and he's always been in shape. And he's just been a responsible, healthy person, and I'm just happy to see that some legends were capable of doing that. Tito did that. Rick Martel was like that too. You got some legends out there that just really kept their act together. You never heard anything about them. They were just family men, retired from wrestling, stayed mostly quiet outside of an occasional Hall of Fame induction or whatnot, or Tito sitting in on Spanish commentary. Otherwise, these guys were really, really stand-up guys and led their lives the right way. So cheers to Ricky Steamboat. The men's blood and guts match was equally as crazy, but I still feel like I liked the women's more because for 10 women to go out there in a match like that, the first time ever, and deliver, I feel like that carries more weight than us seeing these matches every year from the men. So even though the men's match was really good, I still think I'm partial to the women's match. But the Death Riders, they were taking on Darby Allin, Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, Roderick Strong, and Kyle O'Reilly in the men's blood and guts match. We had Darby Allin and Wheeler Yuta start this match. They were starting this match on the outside of the cage, so Darby was wasting no time here. The order here was Darby and Yuta start. Orange Cassidy was out third. Daniel Garcia was out fourth, followed by Roderick Strong, who came out for Briscoe. So I guess Briscoe was supposed to come out, but then they cut backstage, and he's doubled over, like he's been attacked, I guess, by the Callis family. So Roddy's like, I'll go out there, and like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. So they send out Roddy in his place. Then Claudio comes out, then Kyle O'Reilly, then Moxley. So Moxley does not come out last for his team. Moxley's out next, and then again, the final babyface is supposed to be Mark Briscoe, but he doesn't show up. So he no-shows, so now they're down a man, and the final man out for the Death Riders is Pac. And is it just me, or is this dude packed on like 20 pounds of just pure muscle? He is just huge. I really like his new look. I never thought that Pac in his previous gear looked like he really fit in the Death Riders. He felt more of a wrestler than like a Death Rider, He just was always out. I mean, he showed up to the AEW press conference in his gear. I don't know if that's where they got the name Full Gear from, but I remember like he came out and people were like, full gear? Like he came out in his tights and his shoes. Everybody else is in suits and whatnot, and Pac shows up in his tights and his boots, shirtless. It just looked weird. And so he always just came across as more of like a wrestler than like a violent brawler. But this new look with this short hair and them big ears and that gnarled face he's got, and then he's just jacked. He just looks like a rabid animal. And he just looks so much better like this. And he's kind of got like the singlet. Just looks like a badass. So he's out there last. In terms of the violence, where do you start? You get a spike pile driver onto glass. There's, who benefits from that? Who gets the worst of that? When you got to sit down with somebody's weight on you and then your ass goes right into those glass pieces, cuts through your pants, cuts your ass cheeks all up, fucking shit and blood for the next 2 weeks. Who wants that? So you got spike pile driver on broken glass. Mark Briscoe, by the way, he does finally show up. He comes out and he's kind of okay. He's limping a little bit, but he shows up with bolt cutter. So I think the whole reason why they did that Briscoe part was so they can have a reason to open up the door, because the door is technically locked. So Briscoe then getting attacked by the Callis family, he then shows up. he cuts the lock off the door, and now the door's open. So now you got violence spilling outside of the cage. In the meantime, by the way, Orange Cassidy gets his hands stapled into his pockets, so he can't use his hands anymore. So basically, his hands are going to be permanently in his pockets. So it was silly, but also kind of clever spot that I got a huge kick out of. And then, of course, Darby Allin and Pac, they climb outside the cage. They're all the way up the ramp area there. Darby, I believe, gets tasered, right? And then they climb to the top of the tunnel. And that's when Gabe Kidd shows up. Gabe Kidd shows up out of nowhere, the lost Death Rider. He shows up while Pac and Darby are up on top of the tunnel. He sets up tables and he starts loading and dousing the tables in lighter fluid. And then he lights the table on fire. Pac press slams. Just saying this out loud is a trip. He press slams Darby on top of the tunnel and throws him right off 15 feet down, back first, through a flaming table. Darby lands on the table, rolls off, and his body is on fire. You can see his skin in flames. Just fucking nuts. Absolutely nuts. You knew that some sort of a spot like that was going to happen, and a whole bunch of shit happened after that too. After Darby took that bump, they weren't done. The blood continued to spill, and in the ring, I loved the way they set up the finish because, of course, we've seen Moxley ever since tapping out there to Darby or whatever the fuck it was, but he's been terrified to be put in submission holds. Oh yeah, he tapped out to what? The sharpshooter, right? In the Darby match. So ever since then, he's been really, really kind of paranoid and terrified of being put into submission holds. And he quickly tries to escape if he even sniffs that somebody is trying to put any sort of a hold on him. So they've been telling the story. He's been kind of getting into it with Kyle O'Reilly on TV, and Kyle's had him beat a couple of times. But Moxley, so desperate to not tap out. And here, Moxley is covered in blood, and Kyle is also covered in blood, and Kyle locks in an ankle lock, and Moxley fights out of it a couple of times, trying his best. They're rolling all around in the glass through all of this as he's fighting through this ankle lock. And he gets out of it at one point, but Kyle locks it back in. Grape finds the leg. He's really got that thing locked in tight. Moxley is, chest down first on all of this broken glass, and he's trying not to tap. And then he just has to tap. And Moxley taps out to Kyle O'Reilly, giving the babyfaces the win there. And I know I left out a whole bunch of nasty, gnarly spots, but it was just a crazy match. I can't write down at all. I can't write it all down. It was a lot of blood. And I think between, the men's and the women's matches, was the blood overboard? No. The name of the match is called Blood and Guts. You have this level, if you have this amount of blood on every single Dynamite, then yes, the blood is going to be too much. But for these type of matches, this is what AEW does. WWE and AEW handle violence in completely different ways. And we're going to see at War Games at Survivor Series, WWE doing the same matches with the men and the women, but they're going to look vastly different. I doubt we're going to see any blood at all. So that's good. The fans who are critical or tribal or grifting or whatever the fuck, if you're going to have two companies doing the same match concept 2 weeks apart, you don't want them to be the same. You don't want them to both be bloodbaths because that might be too much blood. But you don't want them to be squeaky clean PG Disney shit either. So having one that is really aggressive with the violence and one that's not so much, that's good. You don't want them doing the same thing. I'm glad that one company gives us violence, the other one gives us spectacle. I'm fine with that. Always have been. So I was fine with that 30 years ago too, when we had companies doing different shit. So I thought Blood and Guts was fun. I thought it was a great show. Solid Blood and Guts event. And like I said, I think the women were the ones that really shined because this was their first Blood and Guts match, their first opportunity to go out there in a match like this and say, all that crazy shit the men can do, we can have some fun too when we want. And, as long as these matches get, I did find myself, one of the reasons why I'm giving the nod to the women is because I seemed to be focused in on everything they were doing, maybe because the match ran first. But with the men, there were pockets in the match where I was bored. I was legitimately bored. I'm like, okay, we've seen all this before, your typical stuff. There's no limit to the violence. You're getting spike pile drivers onto glass, but that's not the match finish, so you see all sorts of, after Darby got spike pile drivered on that glass, he wound up climb into the top of the cage and then dropping down and knocking out all the heels, So these moves don't even really do you in once you get to the violence of this level. You can just basically get away with anything, and you have to do something really, really extreme to really get, a believable finish here. So you had to spill outside the ring, you had to get rid of enough people, set people on fire and whatnot, and then you've got Moxley covered in blood, laying in a pile of broken glass while Kyle O'Reilly breaks his fucking ankle, and he has no choice but to tap out. So I thought the finish was good. The match was just, it was violent, but they're all violent. With the women, it was the first time seeing them in an environment like that, so I was a little bit more engaged, I think, is how I would basically review this. But I'd give Blood and Guts overall a solid B+. It was fun, and it was violent. So here's what we got for Full Gear. Full Gear is looking like this. It's Samoa Joe versus Hangman Page for the AEW title. That's going to be in a steel cage. Kyle Fletcher versus Mark Briscoe for the TNT title. Now, they got a stip in that where if Briscoe loses, he's got to join the Callis family. So we will see if he has to join the Callis family at first and then break away, get another title shot, win it then, or if he wins it here. Because I had predicted Briscoe to win the title in the previous encounter. So the fact that they're doing this again makes me think I might be right this time if I predict Briscoe. So we'll do predictions at some point this week, probably Thursday. So keep a lookout. Also, Mercedes Moné versus Chris Statlander for the AEW Women's title. That's at Full Gear. We're going to have that Casino Gauntlet to crown that new national champion. I'm predicting Bobby Lashley to win that. And we also have Brodito versus FTR for the AEW tag team titles, and that could be where FTR wins them, because we know Copeland and Christian are going to win the AEW tag team titles. We know that's going to happen. So at some point, they're going to want to beat FTR for those belts. So this could be where FTR wins the titles. Would not be surprised at all. And we also have Kenny Omega and Jurassic Express taking on the Young Bucks and Josh Alexander. Now, I have a feeling that the Bucks, because they're kind of being pressured, to join the Callis family, even Okada, last week on Dynamite or whatever it was, he was just very kind of silent but threatening. Don't take too long. Don't take too long to decide. I would not want Okada talking to me like that and like looking at me threatening while smiling. I'm like, Jesus Christ, don't kill me. So the Bucks, I feel like, are being pressured a little bit too much into joining the Callis family, and I think what's going to wind up happening is they're going to reject the Callis family and probably help Kenny. So this is a $1 million tag match. It's a 6-man, $1 million deal or whatever. So I feel like in this match, we're going to see the Callis family out there, and the Bucks might just have a change of heart and wind up, I don't know, reforming some sort of an elite or something like that with Kenny and even and with Jack Perry or something. So we'll see. But I think the Bucks are going to probably side with Kenny when it's all said and done. That's just the way I feel like it's going, based on the broke Bucks and some of the things the Callis family was saying to them. I feel like they're going to not wind up joining. So Full Gear's looking pretty good. Collision tonight, interesting little night planned. We've got Kyle Fletcher defending the TNT title against Scorpio Sky. Scorpio Sky sighting. Where the fuck's he been? He's a former TNT champion. We've got FTR, Sammy Guevara, and Roosh. They're taking on Jet Speed, Bandito, not Brodito, just Bandito, and Juice Robinson. So where the fuck is Brody King? Why is he not in that? Also, Mark Davis is going to take on Mark Briscoe. We have Riho and Windsor taking on Hyen and Maya World. Those might have been the two girls that got the spot when Nixon, what's-her-face, and the other one left. And we also have the Death Riders. They're going to be taking on Jay Lethal, Adam Priest, and one of my favorites, Tommy Billington, tonight on Collision. So looks like an okay Collision tonight. So, yeah, that's kind of like the end of my notes there. But there's definitely going to be more to talk about here because I want to see what you guys have to say in the chat about all this stuff and some of the ideas. Oh, is today the anniversary, huh? Today's the anniversary, I think, of the Deadly Game Tournament. That's cool. Which reminds me, I need to text my dad. It's his birthday. Zane G, appreciate the 5. It would have been best for you to have done an anniversary video on Deadly Game Tournament since today is the 27th anniversary. Yeah, I could have done it. It would have been best. You mean to tell me, Zane, you think it would have been better if I did a Deadly Game anniversary on the video on the 27th anniversary instead of an Eddie Guerrero 20th anniversary? What are you smoking? We can definitely do a Deadly Game review, but I don't think I should have done that instead of Eddie. for sure. And I did know, I thought about Deadly Game just the other night, and I said, I want to do another review on that. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I did do a review on this years and years and years ago, but I need to do another one. I need to have an updated review, because I think I was like 2 years into YouTubing when I did that first Deadly Game review. So we are going to do another one of these days. But today is the 27th anniversary, and I wouldn't want to do that instead of a podcast. We got news to talk about, especially since the next 2 Saturdays, we're not going to have Wingies because Full Gear and Survivor Series and whatnot. But a Deadly Game review is something I should do again. Absolutely, absolutely, Zane. Yeah, in 3 years, it'll be the 30th anniversary. That's just nuts. That is just nuts. Oh, yeah, Ricky, thank you for that. I forgot when I was talking about earlier about the War Games matches, how they're going to be 5-on-5, and I was speculating who could join the women's teams. I completely forgot about AJ Lee. We have not seen her since WrestlePalooza, but I could see her joining the babyface team, especially since Raw is in the Garden on Monday night. I think that would be a really perfect place for her to show up. Maybe she could show up as a replacement for Charlotte, or if Charlotte comes around, AJ can join. But yeah, AJ being on the women's team for the baby faces could work, and Becky being on the heels could work. I mean, Becky and Charlotte, could be on opposite sides again if they did that. And Becky would make sense because she does have a championship match against Maxine on Raw. I think on Monday you could have AJ Lee come out and cost her the IC title or something like that. Maxine gets the win with an assist from AJ Lee. And then Becky wants to get her hands on AJ or something. And then Pierce is like, I'll tell you what, I'll put you both in War Games. Or I don't know. You could do it something like that. So yeah, Becky and AJ Lee, Tiffany joining also possibly. We could see that. Nikki, Bella, and Stephanie. So a lot of options for the women. And I think we'll probably get a good idea of what they're going to do on Monday night. But yeah, I could see a scenario where AJ, because I really want to see that for Maxine. They've kind of been building that up with Maxine, and I feel like her winning the IC title would be such a moment, especially in the Garden. She would get such a pop, such an ovation. It would be a big moment for her. You could have AJ Lee help out, cost Becky Lynch the match. That's how you add them back to War Games, and then Becky can win back the Intercontinental title from Maxine, and then maybe pass it to AJ, something like that. Where I feel that's definitely possible. So I think that we could see an Intercontinental title change on Monday night, Becky dropping the title to Maxine to set up War Games. Absolutely. Austrian, thank you. Zach, Gunther is Austrian. I'm like, where the fuck is he from? Reminds me of, ever see Anchorman? And Paul Rudd's character, Brian Fantana. I was in love once, and he doesn't know her name. She was Brazilian or Chinese or something weird. It's probably one of my favorite lines in a movie. She was Brazilian or Chinese or something weird. So Gunther's either Austrian or German or something weird. I don't know. But yeah, when they do Dragunov and Gunther, I think that should be an overseas match. I think that should be a match, in Europe somewhere. I just think that would be amazing and fun, and the crowd would be off the hook for it. Max Pokebro just returning from L.A., like Los Angeles or Louisiana. Hopefully Los Angeles is better than Louisiana. Michael Cuomo, good to see you. Yeah, and so the same night that Santana, thank you for that, Miles. The same night that Santana dropped the title, all the NXT guys were there. So they could have done an angle where they Pillmanized his arm or something. So trying to create sympathy by purposely booking someone bad is not a business that people want to get in when it comes to promoting or writing wrestling. Just stay the hell away from it. Yes, Daniel, hopefully you get a chance to see you at Survivor Series if you're coming down. It's going to be fun. I'll post some info soon. We're going to try to I'll find some sort of place near the stadium or near the ballpark there where we will hang out during the day. Just kind of hang out, have some food, casually sip on some toasty cold ones in the early part of the day before Survivor Series starts. But of course, we're on the West Coast here, so this is going to be like a 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock show. So we'll have to get down there pretty early, but we'll be down there hanging out somewhere. And if anybody wants to stop by, please do. And then if you're at the show, just tweet me. We'll try to meet up. Oh my God, I forgot about Capital Punishment, Great American Bash. Yeah, if they want to change any of that stuff, go ahead. Thank you for that, Ryan. Really, Miranda is Nixon's girlfriend? I didn't know that. Also sucks that Nixon's wrestling career is going to be remembered for injuries and being turned on by Dakota Kai. What a turn. One of my favorite turns ever at that War Games show when Dakota turned on Tegan Knox. I felt so bad for Tegan when she blew out her knee. You know, she's a good worker and stuff. It just feels like it didn't work out for her. So I did not know that they were together, like, as a couple. I didn't even really know who Miranda was. I've never seen her work. I don't know who she is. No idea who she is. Nor do I care, really. But yeah, that whole situation was just like drama that I wanted nothing to do with. You know, I know it's my job to like talk about these things, but I'm like, this is too much. This is too much over two people that don't matter. I just don't give a shit. I don't give a shit why they walked out. I don't care at all. But I wanted to at least bring it up because I thought it was kind of an interesting story. It's always interesting when anybody walks out. Do I agree that Steamboat's on Greensboro's Mount Rushmore? No. He was back and forth I mean, I'm trying to think specific great matches he had in Greensboro. But when the NWA, you know, when he was there and WCW even, he was back and forth between the two companies so much that maybe Steamboat might have more Greensboro history in the early 80s than he did the late 80s. But Greensboro, I would probably reserve more for like Flair and Sting and guys like that, and Arn, perhaps, and maybe even Magnum, Dusty, Nikita. I might feel like Greensboro might be more suitable for a Rushmore there, but Steamboat had so much history, you know, in the NWA and with Flair specifically and FTR getting into all that. But on the Mount Rushmore of Greensboros, maybe, but maybe not. I'm not totally sold on that. Max Booker, you also have Shawn Michaels, who was an asshole but redeemed himself. Yeah, but even when Shawn was born again, you still have plenty of people in tune interviews that said Shawn was still a dick. He still had that in him. You know, it felt like everything was good and whatnot, but there was still some throats he would step on from time to time. He just did it as a Christian. That's all. But yeah, he's definitely way better than he used to be, especially once he got clean. But you would occasionally hear stories about Shawn, you know, in his second run there when he came back before he retired, where remnants of the old Shawn would sometimes trickle in, you know, in terms of how he treated people backstage and things like that. Sky Blue turned into Sky Red. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Thank you for the $2. Zane G, Chamber 26 in Chicago. Punk wins the Chamber. Yeah, Chamber is in Chicago. But that means Punk is going to have to drop the title before then, Zane. And I don't know if that's what they're going to do. If Punk wins the Chamber, that would just give him a title shot. Well, he's already champion. So if they wanted him to win another championship at Mania? I don't know if that's what they're going to do. I feel like Punk might defend at Chamber or be in it, but I'm not sure if he's going to win it. That just means Punk's going to get... Well, that would be a good way to transition from Punk to Cody. So if they did... Because I've been pitching CM Punk dropping the title to Roman Reigns. And you could do that at the Royal Rumble. You could just do that at the Rumble. It doesn't have to be Mania. So Punk could drop the title to Roman Reigns. Then Reigns carries it like into SummerSlam, where he drops it to Braun Breaker. I mentioned that last week. Book Breaker and Roman at next year's SummerSlam. Book it like Brock and Rock in 02. SummerSlam 02, Brock versus Rock. Basically book the same match, but do it with Breaker and Roman. So if Roman beats Punk for the title, there's been talk of a Cody and Punk match, that might be fun. That could be a lot of fun, Cody and Punk. So if Cody hangs on to the title through the Royal Rumble and he's going to take the championship into WrestleMania, then I like your idea for Punk winning the Chamber. So if Roman wins the title from Punk, maybe you do Roman and Breakker at Mania. But I feel like you should wait on Breakker so Roman doesn't have a 3-month run. But you could do Roman and Breakker at Mania if Breakker wins the Rumble. You could also do Sammy winning the Rumble. I don't know yet. It's messy. But Punk winning the Chamber in Chicago would only work. The only way I would be okay with that scenario is like what I said, is if Punk dropped the belt to Roman prior to that, and then he wins the Chamber so he can challenge Cody, and it's Cody and Punk. Then I'm cool with it. Otherwise, I don't know. What's up, new one? Good to see you. No, Juliet, I've not seen the Raven documentary yet, but I did hear about it. All the best to Raven. Nice, Vash. Glad you caught us. Okay, Harley Cameron was cosplaying a Final Fantasy character. See, that's what the job of you guys is. Because I know when these wrestlers, because they're all young, they're way younger than me, so they cosplay all this shit. They cosplay shit that I don't know what it is. And you guys have always pointed out, especially like Xavier Woods, who's always coming out as some sort of, or Mercedes Moné or Sasha Banks, coming out all these video characters and Dragon Boy Z's and all this shit that I don't understand. You guys are always pointing it out and letting me know what they're doing. So I appreciate that. Yeah, very true. If AEW signed Nick Wayne, they can sign Steve Borden Jr. That's for sure. But you also have to be good. Nick Wayne's very good. We got to make sure Borden's good. And they're not just signing guys to sign him. But they also signed Little Brody Lee or little Brody, who's probably not. He's probably going to be in WWE. He's got more friends in WWE these days, I think, that he does AEW. I think he trains with Natty and shit. He's friends with Cody and stuff. So I think little Brody might find his way into WWE, not AEW. All right, just reading through the rest of these chats here, see if you guys had anything interesting to bring up that I didn't get to. Gilbert, I saw a little bit about Ken Anderson talking about his final match to Maven with Eddie Guerrero. Yeah, Eddie's final match was with Kennedy. Eddie cheated to get a disqualification win. Typical Eddie. So good. Right on. Okay. All right, well, I think I need to get up out of here. I'm reading a text from my mom. So, yeah, I think I'm going to get up out of here now. Appreciate you guys hanging out this afternoon, and thanks for another great Saturday podcast. Now, don't forget, a lot of stuff coming up. We got Survivor Series 2005 watch-along tomorrow. Also, big watch-along Monday night for Raw in Madison Square Garden. That's going to be a big one. We'll be here to watch that. Then around midweek, I'll come up here and give you guys a Full Gear predictions video, and we'll probably talk about some wrestling news as well, since we're not going to be doing a podcast next Saturday. So I'll probably come up here Thursday or Friday next week. We'll do a short little podcast. We'll predict Full Gear, and then we'll be here on Saturday to watch Full Gear. And then 1 week from tomorrow, we're here to watch Survivor Series 1987. So all sorts of great stuff coming to the channel this week. So make sure you keep a lookout for that. And thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm looking forward to hanging out tomorrow night, cracking a few cold ones and watching Survivor Series 2005 with you guys. Really looking forward to that one and hanging out, watching some classic wrestling that Eddie should have been there for. Such a shame. Don't forget to check out that Eddie Guerrero video this week as well, if you have not. All right, guys, have a great rest of your Saturday. Appreciate you being here, and I will catch you tomorrow night for our watch-along. Take care, guys. Peace.